Welcome to this explainer. Okay, if you want to get the absolute most out of your corn crop, whether you're chasing that perfect sweet taste, optimal nutrition, or just maximum yield, you have to get your harvest timing exactly right. But here's the ultimate hook, and honestly, it's the secret that trips up beginners and seasoned veterans alike. There is no single right time to harvest corn. The optimal moment depends entirely on what kind of corn you're actually growing. So, that brings us to the big question we're tackling today. When is corn actually ready to harvest? Well, the answer is highly conditional. Are you growing sweet corn for your summer dinner table, field corn for grain? Are you chopping silage for livestock? Or maybe growing popcorn for movie night? Your end use totally dictates your harvest strategy.
Today we're going to break down the specific harvesting indicators for 4 distinct categories. We'll look at sweet corn, field corn, corn silage, and popcorn, right before jumping into a quick final review. Let's dive in.
Section 1. Sweet corn and the milk stage. Typically, sweet corn takes about 60 to 90 days to grow from seed, and you've got a pretty tight 15 to 22-day window of maturity after the silks actually emerge. Now, before you even lay a finger on the husk, the plant is giving you clues. You want to look for completely dry silk strands that have turned to dark brown or black. The outer husks, they should still be bright green and wrapped tight. Finally, if you gently grasp the ear, the end should feel round and blunt, rather than sharp or pointed. Checking these visual cues is huge because it stops you from unnecessarily peeling back the husk and inviting pests right in to ruin your crop. Once those visual signs are lining up perfectly, it is time for the definitive check, the milk test. This is hands down the most reliable way to know if your sweet corn is good to go. All you do is peel back a tiny section of the green husk, just enough to expose a few kernels. Then press your thumbnail firmly into a single kernel and pay really close attention to the liquid that pops out. If that liquid is clear and watery, the sugars just haven't developed yet, so cover it back up, be patient, and wait a few days. But if you see a milky, opaque juice that kind of coats your finger, harvest it immediately. The sugar content is at its absolute peak right then. Now, on the flip side, if that liquid is thick and doughy, I hate to say it, but it's over-mature. The sugars have already converted over to starch, and that corn is going to taste pretty chewy. Now here's something you absolutely can't ignore. Heat destroys sweetness. Sweet corn can literally lose up to half of its sugar within 24 hours if it's sitting out in temperatures above 86 degrees Fahrenheit. No way you want that. So you must pick your corn early in the morning while the field is still cool and immediately plunge those ears into a bucket of cold water or a cooler full of ice. This rapidly halts that conversion of sugar to starch, locking in that perfect sweet flavor. Moving right along. Section 2. Field corn and the black layer. Now, if you're growing dent corn for grain, you can throw those sweet corn rules completely out the window. For field corn, we're managing a large-scale dry down, and the absolute gold standard for maturity is called the black layer. This is literally a dense layer of dead cells that forms at the very tip of the kernel, right where it attaches to the cob. When this forms, it completely seals the kernel off from the rest of the plant. No more nutrients are getting in. The corn has reached physiological maturity, achieved its maximum test weight, and typically it sits at about 30% moisture at this stage. So how does the plant actually get there? Well, maturation in field corn isn't driven by calendar days. It's driven by temperature, specifically growing degree units, or GDUs. Cool weather can severely delay the whole journey from silking to the dent stage and finally down to that black layer. The plant basically accumulates GDUs every single day the temperature falls within its optimal growing range, steadily pushing it down this timeline. But here's the catch. Once you hit that black layer at 30% moisture, you still have to wait for the field to dry down. Forecasting your actual harvest means calculating the days until maturity and then adding the days needed to reach your ideal harvest moisture, which is usually right around 23 to 25%. Hitting the specific moisture level is a massive strategic balancing act. If you get it right, you save heavily on mechanical grain drying costs, but you still get into the field before the corn gets so dry that the combine ends up shattering the kernels or ears start just dropping to the ground. While you're waiting for that dry down, you've got to watch your fields like a hawk. Before harvest, you absolutely must test your stalk integrity using the pinch and push tests. Just pinch the lower stalk. If it collapses easily, it's weak. Then push the stalk to a 45-degree angle. If it doesn't snap right back up, you've got a problem. If over 10% of your stalks are failing these tests in a given area, forget your ideal moisture goals, you have to harvest early. Otherwise, you're risking severe stalk lodging and massive yield loss.
All right, Section 3, corn silage and whole plant moisture.
Silage is a totally different beast because we aren't just harvesting grain anymore.
We're chopping and fermenting the entire stalk, the leaves, the ear, the whole shebang. And look at this stark warning from agricultural extensions like Ohio State University. Historically, a lot of farmers time their silage chopping based just on the kernel's visual appearance. But modern research proves that looking exclusively at the kernel can cause you to harvest at completely the wrong time, and that will absolutely ruin your feed quality.
You're going to hear a lot about the milk line when talking about silage. That's the visible boundary separating the liquid and solid parts of the kernel. Now, when this line is about 1/2 to 2/3 of the way down the kernel, listen closely. It is merely a trigger. It's basically an alarm bell telling you to get out into the field, chop a sample of a few whole plants, and actively test the moisture of the entire plant biomass using a microwave or a Koster tester. The target whole plant moisture for bunker silos is generally 65 to 70%, and timing here is incredibly unforgiving. If you harvest too wet, say anything above 70%, your silage undergoes this foul clostridial fermentation. It sours, the animals refuse to eat it, and all your valuable nutrients just seep out into the environment. But on the flip side, if you harvest too dry, you can't pack it tightly enough. Oxygen gets trapped inside, causing the whole pile to heat up and get moldy. Experts agree on this one. If you have to miss the mark, slightly too wet is generally a lot safer than slightly too dry.
Once it's chopped at that perfect moisture, it is all about packing it to eliminate oxygen. The rules are strict here. Pack in layers no thicker than 6 inches, and you're aiming for a density of at least 15 pounds of dry matter per cubic foot. Then you must cover it immediately with an oxygen barrier tarp. Studies from universities like Michigan State have actually shown that using these tarps to prevent top layer spoilage yields a massive 7.8 to 1 return on investment. It quite literally pays to cover your feed properly.
Up next, Section 4, Popcorn and the perfect moisture. If you're growing popcorn, precision isn't just important, it's absolutely everything. The physical mechanics of getting a successful pop rely entirely on capturing the perfect amount of internal water inside that kernel. 13.5% is your golden number. The acceptable range is between 13 and 14.5% for sure, but 13.5 is the absolute sweet spot. Popcorn is left on the stalk until the husks are brown and the kernels are rock hard. After you pick them, the ears have to be dried in a well-ventilated area for a few weeks to slowly, perfectly hit this target.
If you miss this moisture target, you're in trouble. If the kernels are too wet, the water inside doesn't build enough pressure, and you end up with a flat, chewy, really disappointing snack. If the kernels are too dry, there just isn't enough steam to rupture the hull at all, leaving you with a bowl full of unpopped old maids and potentially some broken teeth on movie night. This is exactly why you must shell just a few kernels and perform a test pop before you go and process your entire batch. Okay, Section 5. Let's do a final review and wrap up.
We've covered a ton of ground today, and I hope this chart really puts it into perspective. Notice how dramatically the metrics shift based on your end goal. Sweet corn is all about maintaining that high moisture and milky juice. Silage requires whole plant testing to hit that 62 to 68% range. Field corn means that black layer and a solid dry down to 23 to 25%. And popcorn requires incredibly precise curing to hit exactly 13.5% for the ultimate test pop.
Because here's the truth. The calendar lies to you. Weather, temperature, and genetics change every single year. So ditch the calendar and start using the sensory and scientific tests we've explored today, whether that's the milk test, finding the black layer, or doing a whole plant moisture test. If you rely on the actual plant, you will confidently harvest with success every single time.
Just a quick reminder before we go, this explainer is for informational purposes. While the rules we laid out today are foundational, extreme weather and regional climates play a massive role in agriculture, so you should always consult your local extension offices for tailored advice. But I want to leave you with this final provocative thought for your next growing season. When you walk out into your fields this year, are you going to harvest by the calendar, or are you going to harvest by the kernel? Thanks so much for joining me today.